We are this time in fourth dimension right now. We're moving into a fourth density state of being within the fifth dimension. So when you release that fear, you realize that we're all one. You regain your power and you know that you can change. You have the power to change this reality. A lot of trauma happened. I began to develop anxiety and depression, and I was really lost for a majority of my life. None of my relationship was working out. It was always with emotionally unavailable people that hit rock bottom. I believe that many of us are here for a mission. A lot of us are being called. Many people use the term consciousness of the collective higher. We see that split in reality where you can either succumb to the old system or you can break away and create your own reality. Break out of the rat cage, the old system. We're here to expand as a soul. There's a shift going on. We know that Ascension is here. I have no choice but to strip the ego and relearn how to connect with the higher powers. I was like desperate. That was the only thing that could basically help me live life to the fullest or just like give up.
Welcome to the Awakening Entrepreneur Podcast. This show is for entrepreneurs that have chosen to define their life beyond the material. They have followed their soul on a hero's journey towards the mystery of the spiritual. I'm your host, Garrett Ng. Each episode will be learning from awakened entrepreneurs and spiritual thought leaders. They have broken through the mold of being ordinary to extraordinary, challenging our paradigm, shining light to the dark, giving hope when there is doubt. The moment of truth is upon us. It is time to transcend our world from fear to love. Are you ready? Let's go! Welcome to this week's amazing podcast. We've got an international spiritual healer, Tiffany Tin. If you don't know Tiffany, she's a renowned master teacher, high priestess devoted to helping people deeply heal and empower themselves through modern spiritual healing work and stand in their power and become the person they want to be. Tiffany has led over 250 workshops, healing events, courses, retreats, and webinars. She's traded in her corporate ladder, in the corporate race, in the rat race, for a sole purpose aligned business. She channeled past lives, light languages, messages from the higher realms. It's like one of the things that if you haven't been in this space for a long time, it seems like it's something from the movie The Sixth Sense and other movies that you've seen. But oh my gosh, the wisdom that she's downloaded from the higher consciousness is fascinating, amazing, and it aligns with my heart, and I'm sure all the listeners listen to the message, because that's when you know it's the truth. She's teaching over 16 different modalities. At such a young age, she's learned all this wisdom that includes Reiki, Chakra Balancing, aura readings, soul retrieval, Etheric cord healing, entities or implants removals, inner child healing, ego alchemy, Tao Source Healing, Akashic records readings, past life purification, channeling with your spirit guides, oracle card reading, and light body activation. And I'm sure that by now she's probably a few extra ones that I don't know about. But she's an amazing soul. She's got a beautiful spirit, and I love to go deep diving and really wanted together with you guys learn from Tiffany's in this podcast. So welcome, Tiffany.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for the introduction. Thank you so much for inviting me here, Gary.
Wow. What an amazing journey that you've gone on. And before we get into the glory of all the like spiritual things that you can do, all the super conscious things that you've tapped into, I want to learn about, like, I guess with a lot of our guests, they didn't just suddenly wake up as a child, or maybe they did wake up as a child with some of these abilities, but over time with the conditionings of society and parenting, whatever, we've lost that. And can you tell about your journey in discovering your abilities?
Yes, yeah. So a lot of people think that, oh, if you go into the spiritual field, you have to be born super psychic. I wasn't like that. I was just a normal kid like everyone else. And yeah, like Gary said, I think we all have those gifts when we were a child, but not many of us have nurtured it because there's a lot of like limitations from parents and social and cultural programming. So I kind of lost touch with it throughout my teenage years. When I was a young girl, I was in a Christian school. So I was in touch with like Jesus and Mother Mary, and my mother also works with Mother Kuan Yin. So those are the three ascended masters I really work with. And I remember as a little girl, I would talk to them. Like when I when I lose my homework, I'll be like, Jesus, please help me find my homework. I promise I'll be good. And then I would like find the homework. I'm like, thanks, Jesus. And that's how I remember first talking to the Ascended Masters when I was a girl. And then, you know, in the human realm, things happen, and a lot of trauma happened in my childhood, and mostly emotional, mental, and like some, you know, beating is a Asian, you know, we all know the bamboo stick, you know,
Yes.
so we have those traumatic memories. And I began to develop like anxiety and depression, and I was really lost for a majority of my life. In my mid-20s, then I started to look into ways to stop the depression without medication because I didn't want to be dependent on it. So I started out with meditation, learning Reiki.
So
And
you had your on medication? Did you go and see like doctors, psychiatrists? Was that how you were diagnosed?
yes, I was diagnosed. Actually, at first, I didn't know I have depression because it's not talked about in the Asian culture a lot. And back then, I was living in Hong Kong for a few years. I was born in Toronto, Canada, but I lived in Hong Kong for a few years. And they don't talk about depression back then. So you were like, oh, it's just a normal thing everybody goes through. But once I moved back to Toronto, I realized with the mental health education that it's not normal. You're not supposed to feel like you're suicidal and anxious and panic attacks and things like that. So I find meditation really helped me. Learning energy healing, which is Reiki, really helped me. And then I just started to expand from there.
I guess you're not reliving the trauma of what you went through, but what really triggered like the depression, the anxiety, like you talked about, yeah, growing up, like we all got caned or beaten up. Not all, but it's part of the overall culture. That's how we get disciplined. And you can see the Asian population overall is very disciplined in their approach and very boxy like, I guess. So any significant event that you gave more meaning to it, that suddenly like you felt, man, why me? Like, why this? And do you feel trapped? Like, because right now it just feels like that, hey, looking back, it wasn't a big deal, but at the time I'm sure it was like very traumatic for you.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. For me, it was many boyfriends. So searching for my partner, a life partner, and none of my relationship was working out. It was always with emotionally unavailable people. Some of them were great, but still there was some red flags that I would kind of just ignore, right? Overgiving and pleasing and really forgetting myself in the process. So through a lot of breakups, one of them finally broke me. And I'm like on the floor crying one day. I'm like, you know what? If there's help out there, please take this pain away. I can't take it anymore. And I had a spiritual awakening very similar to Eckhart Tolle. I was just crying. I asked for help. And then I saw within my mind this like bright white light. And all of a sudden it was like, shoo, and then the pain was gone. I stopped crying. And I just felt like I was floating in space. It was very strange. But from there, I decided that I was going to either live life to the fullest or just like give up. So I was like, well, I'm not going to give up. I have family and friends. So I'm going to go the other way. I'm going to live it to the fullest. So that's kind of like how
Wow.
I started. Yeah.
So you had a faith in a greater source, whether it's Jesus or some divine power early on. Do you ever lose it because you had multiple relationship that hasn't eventuated what your ego wanted? And would you say, hey, you're not looking after me? Or do you have always an ounce of belief somewhere in there that someone will look after you?
Yeah, so I actually became an atheist for a little bit because I was a biology major in university. So I'm like, oh, okay, well, I'm just gonna do my thing because it's just all my imagination. So I actually did disconnect from source and my higher self, my guides, for a very long time. And it was like when I hit rock bottom, I had no choice but to strip the ego. And we learned how to connect with the higher power because I was like desperate. That was the only thing that could
Wow.
basically help me at
Wow.
that
So,
point.
so that's the hero's journey. I guess it's almost like us reincarnating into this lifetime. If you don't lose yourself, you don't really know who you really are. Because now that you've got the contrast, it's almost like, yep, your homework is done, your practical test is done. Now, for you to start to remember like all that you are capable of. So you mentioned that you started a Reiki course.
Yes, yes. I just saw it on Facebook. I didn't even know what it was. I just saw Reiki and I stopped scrolling. I'm like, what is this? And then I was like, oh, this sounds interesting. Chakras was energy healing. I know Qigong and stuff, but I've never heard of Reiki. So I just took it. No reservation, booked it, and I went. And that was like, ta-da, something clicked in my mind. And I'm like, this is the missing piece. Aside from medications and therapies and counseling, like this was what I'm missing. It's the soul, it's the energy.
And then what happened after that? Where did the
So
journey
after
take you?
so after that, I enrolled in meditation school. So I became a meditation teacher, and I was still in the corporate world. And I was just like, oh, you know what? I'm just gonna casually teach some meditation workshops and see where it goes. And
Can you
the
share what
first
you were going through with your friends or family?
I did. I shared with my family. They were pretty like supportive, especially my mom. She's into like these paranormal, supernatural stuff. She's like, oh, okay, yeah, well, whatever helps you.
Yeah.
And some people not so much, right? So I didn't share with
Do
everyone,
you have any
but
siblings?
I do have a younger sister, and she's pretty open-minded. So she's like, okay, well, that's cool. They actually came to my meditation classes, the first round I ever did.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and
Awesome.
it was great. It was full house every class, and from then on, that's when I started to be like, I want to do this full time. Like I don't want to stay stuck in a small cubicle anymore.
Wow. So, how do you start to tap into some of your current learnings and channeling from whether it's the Akashic records or from spirits or from totem?
So that actually started recently. I would say in the last 2 to 3 years. I started to learn Reiki, then I became a Reiki master. Then I started doing like this part time. And the more that I do Reiki, the more that I practice. And I was really focused doing meditation and healing on myself every day. Then strangely, I saw my starseed self. So this might be quite out there, but starseed is parts of ourselves that comes from outside of Earth. So there's past life on Earth, which most people have heard about, but there's like beyond that past life in other star system. So I saw one of my past life star self, and at first I'm like, okay, I've lost it. I'm going off the deep end now. But there were so many signs, like 1111 synchronicities, and waking up from a meditation. And the first book I see has the word Arcturus, right? So all of these confirmations come into my life, and then I expanded into the spiritual community in Toronto, and then they just start to come, all these messages. And it started out with my grandmother passing. Actually, when she passed, she came back in her spirit form to speak to me, and I'm like, oh, that's so trippy.
Wow.
Yeah, and
Wow.
I think because I loved her so much, I wasn't scared. A lot of people get scared when they have these abilities open. But for me, I was just like, well, I love my grandma. I'm not scared of her. So I think she really helped me activate my channeling gifts and abilities.
So for people that haven't experienced that personally, so when you say your grandma comes speaking to you, what does it feel like? Is there some examples you can draw on that people can relate to what it feels like, so people knows, like for example, I learned from you there's different like apart from clairvoyant, which most people know about, there's many different forms of clair abilities, and then one of them like claircognizant that I didn't even know there's a term for it, because like I feel like I'm channeling things that I just know when I'm trying to help someone or a certain situation, but I didn't know there was a thing, because I know that it didn't come from me, just like it just came. But is it from my brain or is it from a higher power? But now that you gave it a term, like I can, that's even spiritual awakening. Like I was going through all these different things and like, am I going crazy? I didn't know there was like for 41 years of my life, I've never heard of a term called spiritual awakening or awakening of any type. I just heard of when you sleep, you wake up, but not awakening, not Kundalini awakening, no type of awakening. But once I can put a frame around it that I could search, because I guess like growing up in the Western world, we used to like getting external information, like reading, watching videos or listening to stuff. And so from that, it helped me a lot. So if you can relate to people that having a conversation, what is that like?
Yeah, absolutely. So for the viewers that don't know what clear ability is, clear cognizance is clear thinking. So it's like telepathy and you just know. And a lot of people that are clear cognizance, I find that they don't realize they are intuitive and psychic in this way because it feels like so natural. It's like a thought form, right? There's clairvoyance, which is seeing images. There's clairsentient, which is feeling. Clear audience, which is hearing a message. There's clear sense, which is tasting, touching. There's many different kinds of clairs. And for me, I started out with, like many of you, clairsentient feeling as an empath. And then I slowly opened up my clairvoyance. For me, with my grandmother, she actually, when she came, she would come through meditations first. So I would see her in my meditation. She would be like sending me visuals of her really happy in the other realm. And she told me she's with Kuan Yin and, you know, she's okay. So even though when I lost her, I was not super sad because I knew that like she was there. Oh. And when my uncle passed away, just before we got the call, an orange from the tree that we had dropped and rolled all the way towards me. And I was like, someone is here. I know someone is here. I can feel it. And that's when we got the call. So I knew that was my grandmother coming back. So now and then she still popped by. She's popped by like 2 days ago to, you know, give me some affirmations that something is going to work out, which it did. So, yeah.
Wow, that's amazing. So when you say clairsentient, how does that feel? Like, how do you know it's just, I'm feeling angry? Like, is that kind of like the thing, or is it like some other type of feeling that you are sensing?
Yeah, so for me is when I get a yes, for example, my heart expands. It's like an explosion. Whoo! Confetti is everywhere. When I get a no, then I get like no sensation. That's how I first started. Yes and no. So I'll ask my higher self, should I do this for my business? Yes. Should I do this? Should I, book into this? They're like, no. I'm like, okay, cool. And then it just started to expand to more like, now they can talk through me, or they can send me visions like a movie. And sometimes I just converse with them. I know it sounds a bit crazy, but
no, like I completely get it. Like recently my kids have the privilege of learning to see without using the eyes. They've got like the blindfold on.
They're so psychic.
Yeah, well, we went down the psychic path, like, and we got a psychic to teach them and to kind of read the cards and guess what it is, but that's guessing, and the probability is maybe like 50% at best, and the kids got a much higher ratio than myself in terms of guessing it right. But like this is actually, they can read the whole book, and they could like walk around the whole house with a blindfold and pick out different items, put puzzles together. And this is not because my kids are special. It's like kids have this ability before they get programmed, and also like physically, I think they change like at the age of 12. So we all have these abilities, but before someone share with you and demonstrate in front of you, there's no way that someone else can convince you otherwise it's not true. In what we've been brought up, it's just not possible. So what you describe, it may sound so far-fetched, but now that you put a frame around it, I'm sure that a lot of people, most people, if not everyone, have gotten feelings before that, hey, there's certain things that's going to be good for us, and our hearts expand. It's like, yes, like that's something that's calling. It may not be logical, but it just feels right. And yet something that doesn't feel right, it may be logical. Conversely, you can kind of feel it, but at times we may have gone with those feelings. At times we may have gone away with it. It's almost like falling in love. Sometimes it may not be logical, but it just, your heart sings.
Exactly. So, but yes, so crazy. And like you said, it's actually not crazy. We have it as a kid. We just forgot how to use it. And I think it's time. Many of your viewers are awakeners, are seekers. They know there's a shift going on. They know that Ascension is here. And actually, I've got a lot of new people reaching out to me saying their psychic abilities is awakening, vivid dreams, and quote unquote, crazy things are happening in their lives. So I think these are all coming back.
Yeah,
it's like
so
Lindy Armstrong. It's all coming back to me.
Yeah, so many people talk about, many ancient wisdom talks about, they say the Mayan calendar from 2012 onwards, but apparently it's not the Mayan calendar, it's from the Toltec or some earlier days, the old Mac. Anyway, what we refer to the Mayan calendar, 2012 is the end of one era, and there's certain scientists says that in 2012 there's a great big solar flare that sent energy to Earth, and so there's a lot of information, all consistent, all have different reasoning, but all consistent that 2012 is the start of the Great Awakening period. What do you understand of this period of Great Awakening or Ascension? Like, people that haven't heard of the term Ascension, what is that about?
Yes, yeah. So you're right. There's so many different ways to look at Ascension. How I look at it is I look at it as a shift in density and consciousness. So we are, I feel at this time, in fourth dimension right now. We're moving into a fourth density state of being within the fifth dimension. Whereas before we were third density in the third dimension. So what this really mean is...
Okay, let's slow it down a little bit, because I was just on a group call last week, and I was sharing with people, again, before my awakening, I've never heard that we're in the third dimension. And then afterwards, I hear from all different walks of life, all different teachers, and they all talk about this as the third dimension. It's like, dude, like, we went to school, like, I know that I wasn't falling asleep for that long of a period. Nobody taught us that we're in the third dimension, not in science class, not in maths class. So I guess there's more of the people listening to this show, they will understand what the third dimension is, but probably have only a vague understanding of what the fourth dimension and the fifth dimension and also the various density. Can you just share a little bit more about that?
Yes, yeah. So dimension, I believe, it's kind of like the best way to think of it is like a fish tank. So the fish tank itself is the dimension, which is a container of realities. And then the water is the density. So with each density, your consciousness expands. For example, first density is like minerals, rocks, the elements. The second density is more like plants, animals, which focus on growth. And third density was kind of like us in our earlier stages, which is self-awareness. So first density awareness, second density growth, third density self-awareness, and then fourth density is the consciousness of love and kindness, and fifth density is more like wisdom, and then sixth is like unity. So that's kind of how I understand density in terms of consciousness. But within the dimension themselves, you can have different density beings living there, because you can have the water, you can have the fish, right? You can have the seaweed inside the tank. So that's kind of like how I look at this transition. But every channeler have their own definition, so it's kind of like what you feel is true to you.
But it makes sense. It's almost like if you go, using the same analogy of water, if you go diving, scuba diving, the deeper you go is you get squashed by the compression or something. You can't stay on there for too long. And there's records showing that the deepest a human being have been able to go scuba diving is like 1,000 meters or how many meters deep, because you can't go all the way down. It's just too compressed. And in this third dimension, they say that it's very dense, which the table that we're touching right now it feels like a table because it's so compact together, even though it's all space. Like they say that what's inside an atom, like 96% is all space, but yet it feels so dense. And everything that we touch, we see, it feels so real because it's so compacted. But when you start to go higher in the water, it's less compressed. So for you to manifest stuff, to have synchronicity, it comes a lot quicker because it's not as physical anymore. It's more in the waveform, like moving towards that direction.
Yes, absolutely. So as we move up in dimension, manifesting. So if you know when you're moving up in dimension and density, when the synchronicity happens more, when the things that you want manifest much quicker. And I believe the reason is before, when we were in third density, if we have a negative thought towards someone, if it manifests right away, that would be very dangerous. So I believe we have to go through as a soul a lot of lessons, a lot of like purification to get to where we are now and to higher density onwards. So I believe that wherever we are, it's okay, no judgment, but we just continue moving upwards and onwards.
So what's your understanding? What is the fourth and the fifth dimension about? I hear like Dr. Joe Dispenza talks about. I think it's from the fourth onward, there's no time, there's no space. And I'm still trying to wrap my hand around because some other channels said, you just don't understand, like, we can't explain to your logical mind what this no times actually is like, because it's all past, present, and future is all in one. But in our logical mind, it's so hard to comprehend what that is. But it's different people channeling or different people looking into science, that's kind of all pointing in the same direction. Again, it all seems very consistent.
Yes, yeah. So everyone has their own unique perspective, like the scientific world define it differently. I think, at the end of the day is to keep it simple. Just be loving, be kind, forgiving, do your inner work and help others when you can. That's the simplest way to, move through this ascension.
So in this ascension process, what is the purpose? Why are we on Earth?
Yes, that's a loaded question. So I believe that many of us are here for a mission. Many people sometimes use the term light workers or starseed or earth angels. We're here to bring the vibration and consciousness of the collective higher. So it's like a lot of us have been called to, break out of the rat cage, the old system. And we're now in the quarantine at this time. And this is like, we see that split in reality where you can either succumb to the old system or you can break away and create your own reality. So all these choices available for us. And I believe that we're here to expand as a soul, to remember who we are, to assist others, help others co-create with each other at the same time, realizing who you are. And then next life, you can be like, oh, yeah, remember Earth? Oh, yeah. Let's not go back there next time.
Yes. So I've learned from you that, as well as other, again, everything is so consistent. There are other star system, there's other beings. You talked about the inner Earth being, and there's a few that comes to mind. There's the other star system, the Palladians and the Arcturians, and there's more talks about, but there's many different races on different planets, and we were an incarnation of some of these early on. Do you want to share a little bit with our viewers of what's your understanding of the various races, our previous incarnation? Because it's not just this Earth that have beings.
Yes. So a lot of us have had lifetimes from other star systems. I believe, from my perspective, that most of us are actually from other planets. So not fully from Earth. We were seeded by other beings. It's quite controversial, but that's kind of my belief. I think everything has some truth in it. So I feel that when I was doing a lot of past life reading, when I would tune into people's past life, I would see them as like aquatic creatures or mermaids and like other type of creatures. And I'm like, okay, well, this is strange. So I started to research, and that's how I come across like star seeds. And a lot of us have connection to, Pleiades, Arcturus. We have had lifetimes in these higher dimensional realm. And we come here to bring forth some of these remembrance for the collective race, basically to help Earth, right? To help the ancient civilizations, Lemuria, Atlantis, rise up again. Learn from the mistakes that we have made before, where we blew up the crystals, Atlantis sunk, the whole descension cycle. Now we're back in ascension. It's time to expand again. So I think that our galactic selves really matter because it's a part of who we are, and it's the truth that has been hidden from us by the government, by the media. But now it's disclosing. You will see like the news talking about UFO, right? They have validated UFO exists. I think that will continue to disclose more and more.
Yeah.
So,
what happened to Atlantis?
Atlantis, from my belief, is that it was really advanced civilization, but it sunk at the end of the descension cycle. So Earth goes through its reincarnation cycle too. And this was the last cycle. And probably more than that. I don't know. I'm not too technical with it, years and stuff. But I do have done a lot of readings with people, myself included, that we have lifetimes in Atlantis, in Lemuria, and it's very interesting.
Yeah, and I think it was like Dolores Cannon, one of the famous channelers, that she started learning a lot of these other beings and past life is also through like just helping. I think maybe she started with just hypnosis, and suddenly a lot of this information just came through.
Yes, and there's like millions and millions of people awakening to their like galactic selves. So I don't think we are making this up. This is something that's within us that have been not disclosed to us, and it's time for us to demand the truth. And I think that's what also this lockdown and quarantine is helping a lot of people awaken and to find out more about the truth. And yeah, it's all about awareness, you know.
Yeah. So when I first awakened, and I find that it's similar to a lot of people, not all the people that are awakening, but they start to see the truth. And the truth is all relative, like from your own eyes and what that is. But one of the things that you start to see, like how the money system really is and how the control from the big corporation or the powers to be, like this is like beyond political parties and presidents. But that's one of the commonality I seem that people start to get shown this information. And whether you call these as the bad people or they actually another version of ourselves like playing the villain role so we can experience the contrast of this planet, whatever it is, that tends to be a common journey I've witnessed. Is that similar to you, what you've seen from people that's awakening?
Yes, yeah, we all have our inner shadows and light. So, you know, I definitely agree. And I love how you pointed that out. It's like we're all connected. We're seeing different aspects of ourselves playing out in this reality. So I think the first thing is to not be afraid, right? A lot of people get into fear, like, oh, I'm afraid of this, I'm afraid of that. But when you release that fear, you realize that we're all one. So, which means you regain your power and you know that you can change. You have the power to change this reality.
So when I started to wake up, it was quite overwhelming. How could these people like do stuff like that and start wars like just for more power and stuff? Like, what were some of the strategies that you used to release some of this fear or anger?
For me, I go out and surf. Like, you know, sometimes I'll see disclosure news and some of them is really upsetting. It does make me sad. It makes me angry how women and the children are treated. We won't go too much into it. But for me, and I'm like, you know what? Then I just got to get up and I'm just going to help share information, serve, be in service, and heal my own inner child. Because I know when I heal my own inner child, I heal my reality too. So I think that's also why Starseed Lightworkers are here, because we know we're part of this, right? We are seekers. We want to learn. We want to alchemize and change.
And there are other beings that you've mentioned in the past that they are there to help us?
Yes, yeah. So They're good, like service to others or service to self ETs. And sometimes people get really afraid and kind of just lump sum all ETs are bad. From my experience, right, we are ETs to these ETs. So if anything, if I'm looking on Earth, I would be like, oh, humans are more cruel than we are.
Just like a cockroach, some of us are scared of cockroach, but the cockroach is scared of us.
Right,
we're so big, we're like the monsters.
Yeah, so some of them actually, most of them are very kind. Like some of them are neutral, they don't want to interact with us, but the ones that do, they are very kind, very loving. I've done so many healings on myself with my inner earth spirit guides, with my Arcturian self and the angels, the ascended master. Just sit and, pray, which is still good. But then I also like to kind of do the work. So, yeah. When I'm doing healing, I invite my guides and I'm like, guides, like, help me, tell me what I need to do. And sometimes I would just like cry it out, and then my inner earth being guides are there, like, speaking to me and comforting me. And they're really kind beings. And I think some of us are having contacts with them, not because we're special, but because we're like, we're claiming that connection. That's where we're moving to like a Star Trek civilization. And I believe that's what fourth density is going to be like.
Can you tell us a bit more about the inner earth race? Like I've heard somewhere that there's actually a race, a more advanced race, like that's living inside of earth, and they're helping us. They're staying there to help us, or maybe part of the ice age or something that happened. They've moved down there. Like I don't know the full story. Like what's your take on? Obviously, you have a lot more dealing with them.
So from my understanding is that there's a whole other dimension and ecosystem in the inner earth, but a lot of them actually are not in our reality. They are in like another dimension. So to come here, they have to jump dimension into our dimension. So a lot of my interactions with these inner earth beings are through astral projection or channeling in meditation form. And there are many other species, more than just humanoids. And I believe they first came into inner earth at the end of Atlantis. When Atlantis sunk, a lot of these people spread out in Mount Shasta. Inside there's a city called Telos. There's other different underground cities as well. And they are so there's like different variation. There's some that's inner earth. Some of them is like inner earth, but in another dimension. It's quite confusing sometimes, but a lot of them are reaching out to the service population if you want to connect with them.
So what would be life like where there's an inner earth being and all the Palladian or the Arcturians? Is it all the same, that it's just love, they just like human form that's walking around, or they all like beings that they have no forms? What do they eat? Do they just take oxygen, a Bavarian type? What's the lifestyle like?
There's so many different kinds. So some of them do look like humans, some of them don't. Some of them look like a cat-like being or insectoid being. It's quite diverse out there in the galactic realm. And from the inner earth beings that I speak to, I believe they do eat. They don't eat as often as we do. They eat very simple meals that are like fruits and vegetables. They don't quite look like the fruit and vegetables we have. Similar, not the same. And then other beings, I've never seen them eat. So I think they are just light beings, super, self-sufficient with using light as an energy source. So I'm like, wow, I want to be like you guys. If I don't have to eat, that would save me so much time.
But you wouldn't get to taste all the delicious Asian food and other cuisines as well.
But I guess, they might look at us and be like, wow, we don't want to go down there and experience what it's like to cook, So it's very interesting. They learn from us too. Just as much as we learn from them, they learn from us.
Yeah, I remember like once I was in plant medicine journey, and like I just feel like, hey, I'm love, I'm the creator, and everything is good. But part of me is like, well, now that I've experienced that, like even though it's probably for like a minute or something or less, let's go back into the game and like bring more people up. It's almost like this is our adventure.
Yes, yeah. Look at it as like an experience, an adventure, and we find each other. I find out like all my clients and I, we have similar connections. Like they would come to me and say, "Oh, I'm connected to Kuan Yin and Archangel Michael." I'm like, "Me too."
Yeah, a psychic did a reading and she said, "Oh, Gary, do you know like Kuan Yin is over you?" So really, yeah. So it's this funny coincidence. You also mentioned before in one of your podcasts, like the Galactic Council. I've heard it from other places as well. Can you tell us more about what they do and who they are?
Yeah, so there are many different councils. The way we understand council is different than what they call as a council. So we look at council as like, oh, a group of like authoritative figures, but they don't look at it. It's kind of like a circle, a group of beings that channels as a collective group consciousness. And they're here to help us with our spiritual growth. And to some of them is actually our multidimensional self. You share the same soul as them. And they just want to help us become more aware of the truth. And we have free will on this planet, so they are not someone to tell us what to do, unless they're like dark and they want to, to conquer. But the loving beings only come when we ask for help, and they are very respectful. They communicate with your higher self first. So they want to make sure that your higher self okay the connection, then connect with you. So with me, I always advise people to work with, of course, the Ascended Master and Angel first, because those are known to be like good, high vibrational beings. Then, once you're very confident, you can expand to the galactic realm, because that's a little bit more like fuzzy. There's so many different kinds.
Wow. So what's the difference between the angels and archangels? And I know that you work with spirit animal, if I get it correct.
Yes, yeah. I believe they're all different aspects of source, right? So, spirit animals are, so many indigenous cultures have talked about them. I find that they're more like an energetic upgrade. So, in this point of your life, which is your animal totem? And then you can go into a meditation and become one with that spirit, like the lion, right? I have this. It's like the strength, like being seen, going out there, and whereas the angels and archangels, they are also very loving being for me. I work with them in healing, spiritual protection, ascended masters as well. They help with karma cleansing. They're all different forms of the higher consciousness.
Mm. And I'm just looking at your list of modality that you use. Reiki, I kind of know what that is, but is it like energy healing?
Yes, yeah. So it's working with like the universal life force energy, which we all have access to. Many people are already doing Reiki and they don't even know it. They already know how to perform energy healing.
So yeah, these are like most of the things that you do, you can do it online and you've helped clients online, correct?
Yes, yeah. I started out in person first and then now I expanded to online.
Okay, you've got aura reading, soul retrieval. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so soul retrieval is also many form. You can do it with your past life self, with your inner child, or energetically. From my understanding, or how understanding is, when we have a trauma that happens in our past life or even this life, a part of our consciousness get disconnected or fragmented, and it gets attached to a certain memory. And that's why sometimes when we're emotionally triggered, we become that different person, right? When we get mad, when we get triggered, all of a sudden we become a different person. It's because that consciousness almost get wormholed into that past self. It's still living in that past reality. And so this is why shadow work is so important. It's understanding what is your trigger and what's underneath it. And basically, soul retrieval is going in there, and there's different ways to do it. Either working with the inner child, past life self, or energetically retrieving it back to your present awareness. And soul retrieval really helped me heal my depression and anxiety because I had so much trauma and I didn't really heal it. I just kind of cope with it. But once I started like finding little Tiffany's and reclaiming them back energetically, I felt like myself again. I felt like, wow, there's some substance in my body. Like I know who I am. I feel whole again. So yeah, it's very
Wow.
powerful.
It's almost like when I went through personal development, I spent quite a few years there. Actually started when I was 14, so for 26 years, 27 years now. And I'm a big fan of it. But I guess the universe, like guidance for me and maybe for a lot of people as well, is there's skills and tactics and strategy on this physical form that you can use these like love languages and understand how to influence people. But all these are still surface level healing work. Until you go deeper, what you describe as a soul retrieval, when that is fixed up, I've seen that there's just no more problems. Versus like if you try to like, if my partner likes gift, I get them gift and they love language or physical touch, I give them a hug. But if the underlying issue has not been resolved, it just keeps coming back. You keep having to hug and give, and you're still in the same cycle. It may peace whatever the trauma or the conflict immediately at that moment until the next cycle comes again. And somehow I think like the moon is affecting when the conflict starts, especially for female, that's more energetically aligned to the moon as well.
Yes, yeah. So absolutely. Everything is energy. We're all made of like electrons and consciousness and light. So we are definitely powerful beings, and we've just forgotten about our powers.
So is the moon, is it a big spaceship? Was it brought
moon?
to Earth?
I've heard about that. I actually haven't really channeled it, but I believe, yes, the moon is artificial. It was moved from somewhere else in our solar system to here, is my understanding. There's so many different like information on the moon. But I do believe the moon is somehow connected to us. I feel a lot of the symbols that are originally good has been tainted by the dark, like the triangle, the pyramid. When people look at it, it's like, oh, is that Illuminati? But to me, it's like, it's a symbol of protection. It's a symbol of spiritual initiation. So I think that part of Ascension, we will also begin to reclaim these symbols, that these symbols are good, they are of the light. And at the end of the day, it's the intention, right? You can have a pen. And with the pen, you can either write something nice or write something mean. So these symbols are just like the pen, is how we use it.
Yeah, got it. Okay, etheric cord healing, what is that?
Yes, so I believe that sometimes when we are connected to a person for a long time, there's etheric cords with our parents as well, right? We have energy cords, and some of these cords can be cleansed, right? Let's say if you're having disharmony with, somebody in your family, you can like send healing and send light to that cord. Or let's say you have a partner that you broke up with, and I do like a cord cutting, like I just release the cord and disconnect my energy from them. So that's like cord cleansing or cord removals.
How do you even learn about these things? Is it from channeling that you've been taught, hey, this is a thing?
Yeah, it's a mixture. It's learning with reading books, learning from different teachers, taking courses. And then once I was confident, then some of these stuff are like channeled. Or I would take what I learned from my teachers and then like channel my own spin to it.
Have you been shown, why were you guided to do a biology course?
Oh, I always liked animals and I wanted to heal people. At first, I wanted to be a doctor, but after I took organic chemistry, I'm like, yeah, this is not happening. So I went to ecology and I studied with like birds and like snails and plants. And I was like, oh, this is so nice. But afterwards, I went into the corporate and I'm like, okay. So I did a degree that didn't really land me any job, like many of us. But I think I still learned a lot from it, because then from the meditation teacher, now I learned, okay, what is the neurons, right? How does the nerve system connect with one another? So it's still helpful in some ways.
Got it. Okay, Ego, Alchemy, Tao Source Healing, Akashic Records readings. How do you do Akashic Records reading? Like, is that something you learned as well? Or is it something that we all have and we just need to know how to activate it?
Yeah, we can all activate it, but you just have to do it properly. Sometimes when people just go in to channeling without protection, and I have stories from people emailing me, I was like, oh, I did this class with someone and they didn't ask us to protect ourselves. And so I learned to always make sure that if I teach something, Make sure we invoke protection spiritually. You can ask Archangel Michael. You can ask your own spirit guides or guardian angels. And there are different ways to channel the Akash, right? Some of you will receive it like a movie. Some of you would just like know the thought form. And some of you might hear it and feel it. So everyone receive it differently. And for me, it just came while I was like offering Reiki session. Like when I'm doing Reiki on people, I would start to receive past life visuals. And at first I wouldn't say anything. I'm like, okay, I just want to make sure I'm receiving it right. And yeah, so I would like slowly share. And then people was like, yeah, this is like how it is in this life too. And so once you hear more confirmation from people, you kind of open up more and more.
How do you differentiate the Akashic record to a spirit guide sending you information?
I think it's the same because I always like to encourage people to connect with their higher self. So your higher self is like your soul, right? Or your future self that knows all about you. So when you connect with your higher self, you can ask your higher self to bring forth, the appropriate spirit guide to you, or, a past life to help you understand why is this pattern happening. And like for me, I worked on abundance blockage a lot. I'm like, why am I always doing things for free? I'm suffering. Like I need to eat too. And then there was a lot of like past life where I was poor, or when I was a monk and I gave up material possession. So I have to like acknowledge those, heal those and let those go.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you talked about protection and asking the Archangel to protect, especially Archangel Michael. Like I'm thinking about like antivirus software. Is it possible rather than like each time you're asking for protection, can you actually say that, hey, can you protect me for the rest of my life? Like, does it work that way?
Yeah, you can ask them to protect you. So I like to use like an invocation. So I would say like, let's say, dear source, dear my higher self, Archangel Michael, and you address them with honor. You say, I love you. I thank you for your guidance. Would you please offer me spiritual protection? If you're doing a meditation or if you are learning how to channel, you want to ask for that protection. And even if you are, going on a trip, you want to ask for protection, you can as well. So I think they're always so kind. They're always so helpful.
Is it like a person? You can say, hey, parents, dad, like, can you help me for my whole life? And obviously your dad or your parents would help you. But what you're referring to is each time, hey, dad, I'm about to go on the trip. Can you make sure that I'm looked after, I'm safe? Here's my number just in case if you need to contact me. Just each time that you do something, like you're being more specific to it. Obviously, they're always looking after you, but when you're more specific, their ability to help you enhances because you're giving them permission.
Yes, yeah, we absolutely need to give them permission. We need to ask, right, for their help, or else they won't infringe of our free will. So it's important for us to ask humbly and to offer gratitude and thanks. So every single one of the session that I do, I always start out with an invocation, speaking to their higher self and asking for spiritual protection. So I think that I'm always constantly protecting myself, but out of love, not out of fear. Because sometimes when we come out of fear, it's like, oh my God, everything is going to get me. And, I need protection. That might innately attract, right, that fear. Or that fear might show up as itself, right? You get exactly what you wish for. You see the fear so that you can work on it. So you can integrate it.
I'm fascinated. What is life like for Tiffany? Do you walk around with your family or strangers? Oh, you're just getting this download from this person. Maybe if they're experiencing this trauma or they're having their past life issues needs to be resolved, or is it something that you turn off?
Yeah, it's something that I turn on. So sometimes people would just like shoot me a text and be like, hey, do I have this or what is happening? I'm like, I don't know. I need to like tune into a state to get the information. Because when I'm in the channeling state, I'm able to put my ego in the back seat and just let source information come through. So there is a difference. You're right, Gary. Like when I channel information, I have to make sure I'm in that state to get into that mode. So I can just be like, oh, this is the lottery number. This is like, but I don't do that kind of stuff. So it's whatever is appropriate. Yeah.
So why not tap into what is the lottery numbers and ask for guidance?
Yeah, I think that because there's certain spiritual lessons that we might have to learn. Like if we, let's say, we're not ready and we win the lottery and then we spend it all, it might make our life worse. And what I like to look at it is I help myself and my clients saying, okay, why do we want the lottery? Is it for abundance? Well, what is abundance for? Security, self-esteem. And if they feel like they're having lacking these areas, then we work on that area. Like I'm not a millionaire, I'm not like super rich, but I feel very abundant. I have an abundant of opportunities, like co-creations, like what we're doing here, and so many laughters, amazing, amazing, sweet, kind clients. Like I'm happy with that. My family's nice and we are in harmony. Like I'm happy. So I feel that once you're happy, everything would just like come.
And so you touch on your clients. Who are the typical clients that you work with? Why do they come to you and what can they expect?
Yeah, so there are also other star seeds and light workers, earth angels. They are all on like this searching journey. Some
How do
of
you know
them,
that you are a starseed or light worker or not?
their guides tell me.
Okay, so
They
if
just
someone doesn't know that, hey, am I a starseed, am I an angel, they can come to you and you can guide them.
Yeah, so some of them, they don't know. They have a feeling. They're like, oh, I'm a starseed, but I'm not quite sure what I'm connected to. Then they come and then I can help guide them and share with them. Some people already know they're starseed and they're actually quite woke, like quote unquote, if we want to get that term woke or aware of their multidimensional selves. And they just want some confirmations or they want to expand it further. Then they will also reach out to me, and that's usually what I help them with. I do help train their psychic abilities and healing abilities with different courses and programs I have. So, kind of like nurturing the gardens of these beautiful souls.
Unleashing their superpowers.
Yeah, and at the same time, it really helps me too to feel empowered that, hey, I'm part of this one. I'm being in service. It's like a vortex. We like expand together.
Yeah. So in my understanding of what the ascension process is and what the new earth that Eckhart Tolle talks about that is possible is, from my understanding, there are races, whether it's the Atlantis or Atlanteans or some other races that have been able to communicate telepathically. It's a way of life. It's almost like the ants or the bee colony that operates without speaking. There's people talk about universal income, so nobody is about working for an income, and kindness and sharing some of these properties is a lot more valued than everyone's just individualistic and looking after themselves and hoarding as much as they can, materialistic possessions. Do you believe that within our human lifetime is something that, or this lifetime, will be able to see that happen? Or do you see that as a transition is going to take a few hundred years or a few thousand years to happen?
Yeah, so for me, I'm always the hopeful kind of person. So I believe it's going to happen this lifetime. The transition, though, will take more than 100 years, I believe. So the full transition into what I envision as like a Star Trek, galactic, trade kind of civilization will probably take like 100 years plus. But I believe that for us to shift into a higher consciousness, into a higher density, it will be in our lifetime.
And do you believe that you can also choose the speed of this ascension as well? Like, because you are the creator of your own universe. So if you believe that, let's just say you go into quantum world of reality, it can happen within the next year, you'll jump into that spot. And when you wake up, that reality will start to eventuate. Versus you say, like, it will never happen, or it will take at least thousands of years. And you'll get stuck in another reality that is possible, an alternate timeline that is the same you, same people around you, but that like everyone is a lot more doom and gloom, and that subsequently also become your reality as well.
Yes, you're right. So it's so hard to say like how it's gonna happen. I just say, just align to your best self, the most happy, empowered, and sovereign self as best that you can. Sometimes people get really scared to say, oh my God, am I ascending? Am I going to make it? And I have days like that too. I'm like, am I going to make it? Well, you just want to have like a group of supportive team. I think part of this COVID thing is also to connect us with people that are part of our love and light team that can help us hold space when our shadows come up, but supportive and being in the same vortex together. So I think it's unity. It's coming together. It's co-creating, and we can make it happen. Just look at us right now. This is our reality, right? We're not in the rat cage anymore. We created it ourselves. So it's possible for all of us.
So in these times of lockdown, what do you spend your time doing? Do you still like learn from books, or are you just learning from your guides, or what do you do to follow your path?
I would say just for myself, I'm spending at least 1 hour in the morning at night to practice healing. So I would do chanting, I would do energy healing, I would do shadow work, cry it out, I love little Tiffany. And I also work on my business and think of, okay, well, how can I serve? How can I show up and share what I know? And we all like pieces of the puzzle. Like, you know something, I know something, and we all put it together. So we need each other. For your viewers or your listeners that is just starting out and is wondering, well, how do I align to my soul purpose? You can ask your higher self, right? Some of you are like teachers, some of you are healers, some of you are like change makers, or, maybe you're supposed to start a charity or things like that. But ask, how can I serve? Think about yourself 5 years ago. What were you struggling with? And if you have overcome that now with what you know, you don't have to be perfect. That is a big indicator of what your purpose is. And also thinking about your inner child as well. Like, what did I like to do when I was a kid? Right? And think about those things and expand on it. That's how I came here, how I got here. So I hope that it's helpful.
How many years has it been since you've done the Reiki course to now?
Yeah. Oh my goodness. I don't know. It just happens so quickly, Gary. It's like, but just never stop learning. But at the same time, don't overwhelm yourself. I do find that sometimes people learn too quickly. They get like spiritual confusion or burnout. Stick with like just 2-3 teachers at a time, right? Learn from them, take what you need from them, practice it, master it, then move on to the next teacher. That's how I started, like one teacher to the next, making sure I don't overwhelm myself. And that's how it helped me. So
yeah, like the overwhelming thing, like when I started waking up at the early stage, I'm not used to the pace. It's just like things are just downloading really quick. I'm staying up in the middle of the night and and just like and every time like my executive assistant used to come in and, hey, how are you, Gary? So, oh my God, like you have to learn about this and that, and I'm just like verbally vomiting on them. And the next day, oh my God, my whole world just changed again to something else. Every day was so different, and like I barely know that myself, like from one day to the next. Not to mention like half a year ago, or a year ago, or even like 10 years ago. And I guess part of what helps ground me is because I've got my kids. I'm homeschooling, or I call it cosmic schooling them. So as much as I want to keep downloading and learning as much as I can, so almost like climbing a mountain. If I just learn this bit of information, how many like dimensions are there? Like 14, 15, what each one of the dimension do? Okay, maybe if I just learn this, I'll be okay. I'll be knowing like where I fit onto this world. And then once you learn it, and then it's, oh wow, it opens up another many cans of worms. So it's almost like the more that I know, the more that I know that I don't know. And the kids forced me to slow down when, hey, daddy, I need your help. Or like I need to, I don't know, like the little one need to help wipe the bum or something. I've got no choice but to leave the videos or the books I'm reading and go to attend to them. So find something, or find people or things that helps ground you. I guess that's your advice. Otherwise, we live in this spiritual world that we're so disconnected to the physical reality. And I don't think that's ultimately, that's our purpose, is to, if we wanted to stay up in the higher dimension, we would have just stayed there and not come down.
Yeah. Oh, great point, Gary. I love that you brought it up. It's that grounding, because sometimes if we're all up there, we forget ourselves. And I like the analogy of like Kung Fu, right? Back then when you practice spirituality, you're practicing like movements and forms, focus and concentration, carry wood, carry water, chop wood. It's very grounding first, and then you build on top of that. So I think that because our society now is so mind-based, it's so important for us to like ground, be in nature, do your house chores. That's what I do when I like get too ungrounded. I'm like scrubbing the floor, scrubbing the dishes. To
Yeah,
come back to
they say it's
reality.
funny that like they say, oh, going back to your kung fu analogy, say like, what do you do to get awakened? Like carry water, chop wood. What do you do after you awaken? Carry water, chop wood. Nothing changes. But there was a time I remember, like I used to not detest, but I don't have a liking towards like house chores, and I'm very achiever based, like spiral dynamics, like orange color achiever and creator. And so if there's someone that is working on a lower hourly rates that I could allocate the work to, like why wouldn't you? It just makes no sense because your hourly rate is that high. You just look at efficiency and effectiveness. But when I was going through the awakening journey, it's like scrubbing the toilet. Wow, this is so meditative. This is like so cool. I could be doing not all day, but I could do this for a long time, and I started finding enjoyment in that present moment of doing that.
Yeah.
Vacuuming. I do hear other channelers like I forgot who that person. I was watching the video last night. They say that person just kind of got awakened, spontaneous awakening. And then it's like, whoa, where am I? Who am I? And the kids had to lead the mom on what to do. Oh, you have to make us breakfast. Okay, I'll make you breakfast. And after you drop the kids off, okay, so what do I do now? You can start cleaning the house and just doing simple tasks. And so I guess the lesson for all is just start doing housework.
Yeah, yes, for sure. Like the grounding work. And I find that like so the grounding work really help us reset our spiritual self too. Like sometimes like you, like I'll be like 3 a.m. download. Okay, I need to like talk about this on YouTube. But when I do too much of that, then I get way too ungrounded. And yes, the people around you that loves you, they remind you to come back and they be like, okay. My boyfriend likes to say, Earth calling you, Earth calling, Tiffany, come back. And I'm like, oh yeah, wow. And then I try to reground myself. So definitely, I think that channeling is great. It can help with your personal relationship, business, but at the same time, we're here in the physical form for a reason.
So this is fascinating when you talk about your boyfriend. How much of the channeling stuff do you do in your relationship? Is he the soulmate, or is he like if there's an issue that comes up, is it his issue or my issue, or is it always my issues? What are some of the skills that you've taken up that you've actively used it in your relationship?
Yes, so I'm lucky that my partner is also spiritual. He's into Qigong and like Reiki. So like I can just talk to anything with him. He's pretty like in tune as well. Like with us, when we're good, we work really well with each other. And the relationship does help me realize my shadows, like some unhealed wounds from my childhood. That's why we like in the relationship, I think that sometimes it's good to have that balance of like light, la la la, good, but then also look into the shadow. And with some relationships, they work on the shadow and they continue move forward, or they don't. So it's really important that both parties are aware of their shadows and their light, and no one bypass anything where you work on it together. That really helps that my partner is so open and supportive, because he comes to my workshop sometimes and he learns about the inner child. So he has guided me using my workshops when I'm having trouble with my inner child. So,
Let's just say if he said something that triggers you, or you did something that triggered him, whoever started is just based on one person's perception, right? So the conflicts are kind of spiraling upwards towards a heated discussion or argument. And how often do you guys go back to the physical matter? Hey, we fought because you raised your voice, or because you did that, or both of you just go back to your inner work and not focusing as much as the physical. I guess when I'm not conscious, like if someone pushes me, well, you pushes me, so you're at fault. Or we talk about the physical situation that happened. But from a spiritual sense, like there's always lessons, especially for the inner child healing, that opportunity for us to use that to work on the shadow self if we are open to it.
Yes, I love that you mentioned that, Gary, because I think that it's like like, I'm human. A lot of people think, oh, if you're spiritual, then you have to act like love and light. I'm like, no, I have like emotions, and my anger, which I've been suppressing a long time, is quite useful in boundaries. Like before, I got into a lot of trouble because I didn't enforce my boundaries. So now, instead of looking at anger as a bad thing, I'm like, okay, what is my anger showing me? And we do, have fights sometimes that we will cool down, and then we would like talk it over. And sometimes we go to someone else as a third perspective to help us understand ourselves. And then you get better, you get to know each other. What I really want to share with your listeners is that you have such a great potential as a person to hold space for your partner in these times of the shadows. Like a lot of times, men have different woundings as females too. But men, I feel like, have been conditioned to always be the tough guy, don't cry, or, you girl, or something like that. But there's something so beautiful when the man can like hold space for the woman, and when the woman can feel safe enough to trust him to, support her. That creates such a beautiful energetic. And this is where I feel like the new relationships are going to be like. It's going to be that really supportive, mutual relationship.
I'm going to link your YouTube channel on the show notes. So for a brief explanation, what is holding space?
So holding space is being there for the person unconditionally. So unconditional awareness, unconditional presence, which is hard to do when you're in the middle of an argument, but you try your best, right, to reset yourself, and you create that space. So after everyone has calmed down, you can say, okay, I'm holding space for you. And then you just listen without judgment and with compassion, and you learn how to separate yourself from being triggered and just pure being there for them. And everyone wants you to hold space for them differently. I remember one time I was trying to comfort my friend, and I touched her, and she was so mad at me. So I'm like, okay, that's not how this person wanted me to hold space. So you kind of want to just ask them, like, what can I do for you? How would you like me to be here for you? And sometimes people are not used to getting asked these questions, especially when, in our old school times, nobody asks us like, oh, what is your emotional need? How can we meet your emotional needs? So the moment you start asking your people around you these questions, it also help them discover what they need and nourishing themselves, and it creates better relationships all around.
What's your methodology to at least try on how your ego is not to get triggered while holding space for that person?
For me, I look at the inner child. So I sit there and I just see the inner child. You can get mad at a child, right? When they are having a tantrum, you're just like, oh, they just need to release it. But sometimes we look at our parents, our partner as the adult, and we forget that they also have an inner child. And when you can tune into their inner child, then you will have so much more patience, love, and understanding for them. And you're like, oh, that's kind of how I heal my relationship with my mom. I used to get mad at her, we would fight. But when I started doing inner child and I see her inner child, and then I'm like, wow, I have so much compassion for my mom about what she went through. Then I hold back my own triggers or anger and be like, I can be really present with her and comfort her. And that's how our relationship transformed.
Wow, I think that's a great method. And there's things I've learned. They say that if you heal whatever conflict arises in your own intimate relationship, is usually from your parents or the other side's parents that has not been resolved. And if you don't resolve it, if you need additional leverage, is that it's going to continue to your kids and the future generations as well, until that someone decided to break that particular cycle.
Yes, absolutely. Yes. We are here to break these karmic cycle. To me, karma is like energy and momentum. So somebody put the brake on it and be like, okay, this stops here.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. So some people say when they look at past lives, they say, I have a fascination. I've got a drawing next to me. Somebody says that past life of mine, I'm a samurai, and part of the samurai traits is this, and that. And yet some people say that, hey, you know what? Looking at your past life, you've got enough things to worry about in your current life versus going back to your past life and dealing with different things. But I think it's almost like it's a narrative almost like in a movie that you watch. Sometimes when you watch the prequel of what happened earlier, it may or may not be useful, but at least it's interesting, and different strokes work for different folks. Like, do you go to your own past life and get a fascination to, hey, I wonder, like, where have I been, like, on this planet, on that planet, and try to find out as much about your past as possible?
Yes, absolutely. So with good question, Gary, because past life, some people think, oh, it's only sadness and death. But you can actually gain a lot of skills on your past life too. I actually don't go looking for them. It's only when something comes up, then I'll look for it. So what really helped me is like using it to heal, let's say, abundance blockages. But I've also connected back to good past life, like the priestess cells that I've been in. And a lot of us have these lifetimes where we were spiritual healers, masters, shamans, and medicine women. So connecting with those aspects of yourself, how you realize, hey, it's just not all suffering and pain. There's some good stuff. And when you remember it and you re-download it, you can use it in this lifetime. I use it, like I download those healing abilities I had into this lifetime. If you guys know Lee Carroll, he channels Cryon. And he also said, yeah, I'm not a public speaker, but I go into my Akash, find those selves that are good at public speaking, and download the energy to his present self. So you can definitely do that. And for like business owners, you can go in, find your past self, maybe as a queen or as like a leader of a group, and re-download those energy back into your present.
That's so cool, because I know it's kind of like the Matrix, that you can just download the program in the actual movie, download a program, and it's like, I know Kung Fu. And we've heard of stories of kids that after a car accident or something that happens to their brain, they fell down and suddenly they can play the piano or have different skills. So I believe this is totally capable, but not only that, you teaching people a methodology that they could start to download things. And I've also heard of some of my friends that teaches people on how to download, hey, speed reading or good at maths or something. Man, like our human potential are just untapped. We're just scratching the surface of it.
Yeah, so interesting, right? So it's like, what is the term? Space. It's the final frontier. To me, it's like soul. It's the infinite frontier. You can do everything with your soul healing, downloads, and reactivations.
Dimensional traveling. So do you still do any retreats or workshop online these days? If people want to learn more about it.
With the COVID thing, I am not doing any in-person stuff, but I am leading some online courses. I have one called Channel Divine Messages with Spirit Guides. And I also teach women how to be healers in my High Priestess Ascension Academy. And then I see clients online in Zoom calls or Skype. So yes, mostly right now online, social distancing.
Yeah, so if you want to learn more about your work, like where should they go? And I think you've got a free 3-day course, which I've taken as well. Do you want to tell people about that?
Yes, absolutely. Thanks for asking. My website is highpriestessascension.com. You can find me on Instagram as well with the same handle. With the free course, so I have so many free courses that I've made over the years. There's one called Opening to Channel, which is a 3-day course that I taught in my goddess group, connecting with the Ascended Master, Archangels, and Animal Totem. So it does have some goddessy vibe to it. If you don't mind, that more feminine energy, the teachings is still very powerful. Then there's like how to process anger and inner alchemy, the 4 principles of inner alchemy, which is more about the shadow work that we talked about. So those are all free. And thank you for Gary for mentioning that. Maybe it will help someone, right? We never know.
Well, I'm Asian, love free stuff.
Yeah. Free. Well, it's not exactly free, right? Because you have to put in time into learning it. So
on behalf of the world, like, thank you for putting up all these great resources out there. It definitely helped me with, at least with the clear cognitions and now the clear sensing. Like, once you know that it's not something that you're just dreaming of, or it's almost like the kids that seeing like spirits and things that is a weird thing that you're going through, when it's a normal thing, when it's an actual ability, then you can actually harness it a lot more. It's almost like if you watch the Marvel, the X-Men story, until you go to the Xavier school, you just think that you're an outcast and you've got these weird things that's going on. But once you can understand it and there's a tribe, and it's a gift. As an example, like, I've got a condition called narcolepsy, which is I just fall asleep while I'm talking to people. Actually, less about when I'm talking to people, when people are talking at me, and when I don't have to respond, when I'm going to seminars, when I'm driving, I just fall asleep. Like, for all the years of studying, I read 2 pages in bed and I'll fall asleep. So I don't know how I passed high school and university. Probably the divine guidance. Hey, just go look for the shortcuts. And that's one of my gifts. Because I fall asleep so quick, it forces me to, what is the shortcut to finding the gist of this whole book, whether it's reading the book summary or speed reading or something. And just a couple of days ago, I was talking to a shaman. After my first ayahuasca experience, I stopped taking the medication that keeps me awake. Because part of me, like, I know that there's a gift in this, to be able to fall asleep into a deep dream state so quickly. And the shaman said, yes, it's definitely a gift. I wish I have your ability. Mm-hmm. But if we don't know about it, we think it's a curse. Like, I can't operate, I can't do. Well, this is forcing me to be more of a human being, just relax and just chill. But yet, if I try to not listening to the gift and the inner voice that comes through and try to fight it, the life is a struggle. So I think, like, through this core of learning from you, Tiffany, is like, how do we learn more from the gifts that we haven't yet identified with? And the listeners, they want to reach out to you. What's the best way? Is just going through to your website and just making contact to book a session?
I would say the best way to start is to start with my YouTube channel, because I put out a lot of free content in there. So my YouTube channel is my full name, Tiffany Tin. I talk about the starseed stuff, shadow work, channeling, everything that I love doing is on the YouTube. And there's so much free meditations that you can try. And if my energy vibes with you and you find that, like, you resonate with the information, sending me an email on my website, or you can just book directly on my website for a session. That is where I would say to start. For those that are more self-paced or may not want to work with me one-on-one, Channel Divine Messages with Spirit Guide is a good course to start. That one is a paid course, but it's not too expensive. It's like $100. So I would say start with that, and then email me if they have any questions.
Fantastic. So last, do you have anything to share for people in these interesting times that we're going through?
Yeah, so a lot of people have been asking me this. For me, I feel like the best thing to do is just to go inwards, go out inner work, spend time and connect with your loved ones, like call them, video calls, spend more time with them. And take this time as almost like a collective dark night of the soul. You're trying to find out what is, my purpose. It's like the opening of the third eye, right? Both light and shadow becomes both sides of the same coin. So you become the alchemist. So, come into that realization and to look for ways to serve. I think that some people feel like, oh, you need a certification to serve. No, you can go on video, share something that brighten up someone's day, or, share resources that would help someone. There's so many ways to help and serve, be in service to others. So that's what I would say. It's the best way to navigate this thing right now.
Thank you for sharing your time with us and helping guide us through these interesting times, and give us a bit more of a framework to understand what a lot of us probably intuitively know, but haven't been able to intellectualize and find an acceptance. This is a real thing. So I'm really appreciative of the session we have, and I look forward to having further conversations with you, Tiffany.
Thank you, Gary. It's lovely to be here. Much love.
Awesome.